So, a very good evening to Professor Nagarjuna and all of you. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. You've already met Professor Nagarjuna in his last lecture, the day before yesterday. So, I'll just invite Professor Nagarjuna to continue with his second presentation and discussions with all of you. Thank you very much, Professor Nagarjuna.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Saikia. Yeah, good evening, all of you. And once again, I would like to continue some part of the conversation that we started in the last session. This time, instead of I'm expecting your participation this time a little more in terms of speaking out, so that once in a while I would be seeking your inputs, and at that time, please raise your hand and let us unmute your mic and speak out, so that we can have good conversation. And today I'm also looking at the message chat as well. So in case you have a question, you can also type it there. I mean, in case once in a while, in case you don't want to speak out, but then you want to write when that is possible. Okay, so one of the questions that I wanted to ask this time would be, oftentimes what happens is it is to get a good idea about this whole idea about how do we actually develop our attitude towards holistic and multidisciplinary education. It's important to go back to history. So today we will do a little bit of that part of that thing. Of course, we can't do a lot of history, but then I would like to open this question with one question, and the question is, what do you think the formal modeling that scientists do, okay, and that started with social sciences or natural sciences? I hope you understood that question. The question is that formal modeling happened with natural science or with social sciences. Any of you can unmute and speak out. I hope you understood the question.
Good evening, sir. I think
Yes.
natural science is.
Natural sciences, right? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Any other guesses from anybody else? Surinder had one guess that it is a natural science. Any other guesses? Do you all agree that Surinder is right? Okay, it's actually very counterintuitive kind of thing. In fact, this is what I've been hearing in most of my interactions with the students as well as teachers. So let's look at the history a little bit. So this is I hope you see the question that I'm asking here. So the question that I'm asking is, what is common between Panini and Pythagoras? Okay. So I think most of you must have heard about both of them. Okay. Panini is from India and is a very well-known scholar, linguist, who developed a fantastic model of how languages work, particularly with regard to Sanskrit language. And Pythagoras, on the other hand, is a well-known mathematician. In fact, is one of the persons who inspired a lot of mathematicians as well. In a lot of sense, Pythagoras is well known not only for the school theorems that we learn, Pythagoras theorem and all that, but apart from that, he has done many other things. So we're starting with this question with a good intention that I wanted to have, because a lot of people think that the kind of knowledge that they have built, Panini and Pythagoras, the problems that they actually solved, which made them more famous. Pythagoras and Panini might have done a lot of things in their life, but the reason why they became popular is, interestingly, not because of their achievements in natural sciences, but being able to explain a particular domain of human culture. Okay, so here what we are talking about is the two things here. I'm just typing for the easy sake, two aspects of the human culture: language and music. Panini modeled language, and Pythagoras modeled music. And both language and music are part of social cultural forms, right? I think all of you agree that language and music are products of culture, and they're not natural phenomena in that sense. Yeah, because and that is why I asked. And then, do any of you know, like, what is the time when Panini and Pythagoras uh, were living? At least, of course, the exact dates are always doubtful, but let us assume that they are about 5th century, 5th century BC or AC. So that was the time when uh, you know Panini and Pythagoras. Of course, exactly we cannot say, but that's exactly around the same time. So one is in the Greek part of the world, and the other is in the Indian subcontinent. And one of them has done a mathematical modeling of music, which is a cultural product. And the other person has done, I would say, if not mathematical, a formal model, a generative model of language. In fact, while Pythagoras might have understood the proportional manner in which the musical notes could be understood, if any of you have interest, I mean, people could know that Pythagoras was one of the first persons to say that each scale in music actually has those 12 notes. And that's also something to do with mathematical insight that he had in terms of proper, some exact kind of divisions that numbers have. It's a kind of a property that he talked about. And then he also given some kind of geometrical interpretation of how to regenerate and generate those notes. Now, because of which actually Pythagoras became very popular with the folklore, because that is very important, because scholars don't attract a lot of following. But Pythagoras was a different person, because Pythagoras had a lot of following from the people. A lot of youth joined him because they were mesmerized by the way how he was, mapping both music and mathematics together. And that is, in fact, one of the reasons why mathematics became very popular in Greek during that period. In fact, before that, there are very few people who are doing mathematics, but Pythagoras made it into a cult. But a lot of people started following him. And Panini, on the other hand, actually understood the elements of a language to begin with. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about these two aspects is that, both these mathematical things are still the strongest aspects of the science that we know about. For example, the connection between music and mathematics is still acceptable to the current model, and people still continue to, of course, they have given much more better interpretations of that in terms of why certain notes do not, appear to you uh, in the sense that it doesn't give you the kind of musical feeling to your ears, whereas some kind of proportions actually give you much better feeling to your ear. And on the other hand, what is a well-formed sentence? In terms of how do you actually combine words and verbs to create a sentence? And in the process of doing that, one interesting thing that both Panini and Pythagoras are known for is that they created the rules of how to generate the other patterns. So that is why I called it as a formal generative knowledge. So they told the rules of producing the knowledge, whether it is a musical or it is language aspect about it. In fact, the one interesting feature about this formal knowledge, whether we call it in sciences that we follow today or in the past, is that the set of rules are finite, but what they generate out of those rules is infinite. And that applies to both Panini and Pythagoras. The kind of mathematical patterns that Pythagoras discovered helped him to actually generate enormous number of patterns. So this is, in a sense, the kind of thing, and it's a big irony because we completely forgot that one of the first instances in the past, around 5th century BCE, that two people from two different civilizations and scholars from different cultures actually did not solve any of the natural science problems, but instead they actually picked up some of the cultural products. And the two most important cultural products are language and music. And we understood the processing part. In fact, today, if people who do natural language processing using computers actually follow the generative knowledge model, in fact, even the large language models that are in use by ChatGPT and also the BARD, etc., are also generative knowledge structures. And that is what gave this kind of models much more popular. So it is in that sense that what they have discovered in that past is not completely forgotten. So, and then the other important aspect that we also have to understand is that the uh, uh, Panini, uh, Panini's writings, for example, are much more systematic than Pythagoras' poems. And the manner in which, in fact, Euclid did much better job in terms of actually putting together many of things. And that was, of course, couple of centuries later after Pythagoras, that Euclid managed to put together a deductive formal axiomatic presentation of geometry. And which is also, of course, a very interesting achievement at that point. So the reason that I wanted to bring out this point is because, one of the themes that I am going to talk about in today's talk is to tell you or to sort of convince you to show that, if you want to develop this interdisciplinary kind of attitude towards knowledge and also encourage such knowledge about it, there is one important path towards that. And that is, look at some structures that different people have been working together, that scientists and others have worked out, which have actually come out with certain generative methods of knowledge, and then explaining the phenomena around us. And then the kind of patterns that they have taken up, the tools that they have given you, are not discipline specific. And that is the point that I wanted to bring home in this talk. And of course, in the last uh, time, I asked you to read about I recommended one book. Could any of you tell one of the important books that I asked you to read? I hope some of you are taking notes from the last class.
It was an author called Mitchell.
Yeah, that's right.
I looked for it, sir, but unfortunately I couldn't find it.
You mean you're not able to find the book? So the book's title, if you have, the title is Lifelong Kindergarten.
Beg your pardon, sir?
The title is Lifelong.
Sir, I found it, but it is not available on Amazon. And unfortunately, our library doesn't support such books. I'm from a dental college, so that's the problem.
Okay, so don't worry. Do one thing. There are, if you go to the Lifelong Kindergarten website, there's a nice website to it. And Resnick actually gave some recorded lectures. You can listen to them. That's also sufficient to get the essence of what he's talking about in that book.
Okay, sir.
Now, the reason why I also wanted to mention this is because, see, lifelong kindergarten would actually mean one thing important, that when we are in kindergarten, we have a passion and we keep doing a lot of things. And then when we get into college and also when start we getting into schools and things like that, something interesting happens, that our creative potential begins to come down and we become more consumers and not producers. Okay, and that was the reason why this constructionist view of knowledge and creative ways in which people like Seymour Papert and also Resnick have actually provided. So that's why I would say please do listen to those lectures and access them. So today I'm going to give another such name, which again I will come back to it. Come back to the name a little later. But now let me ask questions based on the three networks that I've shown you on the screen here. So one is a centralized network on the left-hand side, and in the center, this network is called decentralized. On the right-hand side, you have a distributed network. Now, which of these networks appeal to you as the best kind of networks that we could think about? And what kind of descriptions do they give? Let us consider these three as three different network models. So what kind of instances you have for, let us say, centralized and decentralized and distributed? Some examples. So any of you can unmute and tell me about what these pictures mean to you.
So distributed one is appearing a better one.
Okay. Okay.
It is just because with the help of mathematics, we are in position to, define it or can explain it.
Okay. So I just wanted to ask, can you see my cursor on the screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So suppose I am here, for example, in this node, in this distributed network. I want to send a message to this end on the top. All right. So how do I
Yes,
send it?
sir. As far as physics point of view,
Okay.
if we'll
Yeah.
say okay, from same finite side, one plane wave is appearing,
Mm-hmm.
and since the hopping means the connection, it is
Yeah. How many
fixed.
times you have to hop to reach to the other end? Because the
May
message has to go from this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the 10 is the least number of hops that I can take. If I took the other time, Becky, that would be, in fact, the number of hops would increase,
it
right?
will choose the the
The
least
path
ones.
that is least. Yeah.
List, yeah. That's
Yeah. So that is
yes,
10 is what I counted. So I took this path, which I think is the least. All right.
yes, sir.
Because from this end to this end, of course, I'm just made it kind of a thing. And what about this one? Suppose I'm here, I want to send the message to this path. So I would hop from here to here and from here to here. Okay, why?
Yes, sir.
Because this is a hub. This particular hub is connected to a couple of other nodes. And so I also happen to be connected to that particular hub. And therefore, even if I am here at this other end, I still have to make only two hops, 1, 2, and 3. I'm there to that end. Even if I have to reach a message to that person, for example, within 4 hops, I'll be able to manage to reach that place. Okay. And what about this one? If I'm here and I have to send a message to this node, I just need to make one hop, right? With just
Yes, sir.
one hop, I'll be able to reach that place. So it is in that sense, if you really want to send a message from one place to the other, Okay, this is the fastest way to reach there. Okay, but now I wanted to ask you one more thing. Let us say, I mean, we have all experienced a stage a few years ago, the COVID pandemic. Okay, so let us think about the social structure. If the social structure is like this one, all right, or this one and this one, which is better if you have an infectious disease in the world? It's not a message this time. So it's a virus that is getting transmitted. Let's say I'm the person here who is infected. And if I have to infect everybody else in the world, within one hop, I will be able to infect everybody. I hope you are understanding this part. And similarly, if I am here and I have to infect the other people, it's a little bit delayed because of there are a couple of hops that you need to make. That means the virus has to first infect these people here, and then it has to transmit to that one, because there is a link between that node and this one, because this particular person is also a member of this network as well as that network. And therefore, the disease will spread a little less faster than the centralized one. And what about the third one? So if I am the infected person here, and if you have to infect this person, what would happen? Because here you are only connected to two neighbors here. This person is connected to two neighbors. This person is connected to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 neighbors. Okay. So this is the kind of network knowledge that was used to curb the pandemic. In fact, when we said the physical distance should be reduced, that used to be the mantra during that period. So how did we get to that understanding? And that understanding has actually come from the network modeling that people have done in epidemiology. Epidemiology is the science where people study how diseases transmit from place to place. There is another study in social sciences called mimetics. In mimetics, people study how messages in society move from place to place. Say, for example, if you have a fake news, for example, suppose if I have a fake news here, and if that fake news has to go to the other end, what kind of a networks will transmit fake news much faster? In fact, something like a Facebook is of this kind of structure. This is the kind of structure, something like a WhatsApp kind of structure. And this is a kind of a peer-to-peer kind of network where people are very protective about their partnership with the people. So they generally don't trust everybody. They trust a very few people in their social network. And then that is how they participate in this thing. So if this is the kind of network that you have, then the people who follow this kind of internet model, for example, will have less fake news in their life. Whereas these people will have a little more fake news. And then this is like, for example, the news will just spread like hell. And then, of course, good news also will, of course, be spreading in the same way. But this is the way how, for example, mimetics is used this model. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this network model is because, there is one interesting understanding that we have understood from networks is that the network is one formal structure, because the network is studied in mathematics and also in physics and various places. And this is part of what, if you are reading computer science, for example, you do discrete mathematics. And in discrete mathematics, you study what is called graph theory. And in mathematics, for example, this is studied as a part of graph theory. Now, this insight actually has helped people to not do only physics, only chemistry, only biology, or only mimetics or epidemiology. But this particular model has actually become like a very interdisciplinary kind of a model that helped people to understand across all the disciplines. So I would like to think in terms of, what do we mean by holistic and interdisciplinary thinking, and where does it come from? It actually comes only when you have a couple of such models in your hand. And one of the most important model that inspired me quite a lot is the network model. In fact, if you hold on to network model and understand graph theoretic approach, you will be suddenly exposed to understand multiple things. You can study a lot of phenomena in economics. You can study social sciences. You can study geography, for example. So there is, and in fact, this particular model is inspired, and these models actually have come again. The reason why I wanted to tell you and impress you on that is that the application of this particular model to natural sciences came much later. It was first applied in sociology. So there is one interesting experiment that one of the sociologists did. And he said, there is one person in Timbuktu in Africa, and he want to send a letter, for example, to the President of the United States. So Timbuktu in Africa is in a remote tribal village. And there is a person, and he wanted to send a letter to the thing. Then how many hops that letter would make before it reaches, let us say, the president? And now the experiment that he did is the following: that he asked him to send the letter to somebody he knows, and then that letter will be going to another person that he would know. And in the process, because the letter has to reach very fast, what kind of a path the letters would take? And when he did that, they found out that on an average, within 5 hops from anywhere to anywhere, a letter would be easily able to reach to the other place. Now, why is that possible? That is possible because our postal network is of this kind, the decentralized kind. Why? Because what do you do if you have send a message? You go to the nearest post office and drop it there. And the person would look at the address of that. And suppose if it has to go to Washington, what he would do is he would possibly, let's say, imagine that he is in, let us say, somewhere in a village in Pune district or something like that. And then from Pune, it will go to Mumbai. And from Mumbai, let us say it will go to New York. And from New York, it will go to Washington. And then it will go to the president. So it is in that sense, when a message has to go, or a material like a letter has to be passed on to something like that. And this understanding of how things will happen and how many hops that you need to make in order to do that. And for this, he has to understand the geography of the world, and he has to understand the relations between villages, towns, and cities, and also understand the transport mechanisms in terms of is it a roadway, or is it a railway, or is it an airway, or a shipway, and things like that. And then you have to solve this problem in this manner. So this particular social networking concept by a sociologist was applied to begin with, which later on inspired some physicists and mathematicians who actually started using this structure to understand even material science. In fact, there are a lot of material science models that are used today by physicists to study this. And more than that, the model that is in between here is also sometimes called, when the large number of nodes actually increase, it actually produces what is called a scale-free network. And these scale-free networks are there in biological systems like our bodies. The metabolic links that we have is also a scale-free network. The kind of network that we have in the brain, the neurons form, is also a decentralized scale-free kind of network. And similarly, the manner in which the mass aggregates itself in the cosmos is also a kind of a scale-free network. The mass aggregation studies also demonstrate something like that. And of course, the social systems also have that. So that is what I'm trying to talk about. So think about a model and the kind of models that are there. I'm not saying that network model is the only model that is applied across disciplines, but there are many such models out there. So the key to today's message is that model-based reasoning is one very important manner in which you'd be able to encourage your students to attend to interdisciplinary way of thinking. And so this is one of the points that I wanted to talk to you about this one. So can you guess what this picture is about? Anybody? This is actually a data representation in the form of a network graph. But what is this data about? How does it look? Don't hesitate to make a guess.
Sir, does this look like a nebula?
Oh, well, that's an interesting thing, you know. Any other guesses?
It's supercluster, it's filament.
Okay, supercluster and nebula, and any other?
The internet.
Okay, internet. Any other guesses? So this is the key here, you know. So this picture actually is the picture of internet 10 years ago. So what are all these small nodes that you see here? These are the computers, like the end user computers, like for example, my mobile or my laptop or something like that. And they're connected to a router, and that router is connected to a hub by some ISP here, let us say. So each of these big networks that you see are like the ISPs, internet service providers. This is the entire world internet. So these are all the ISPs that are out there, which are the hubs out there. And then those hubs are also interconnected to each other. So this is an example of a scale-free network as well. And the you know, but then interestingly, I'm really happy that one of you thought that this is a nebula. Is because this is where the intuition sort of works, because when you're recognizing patterns in the world, you forget your discipline. And in fact, that is one of the important things that I wanted to say. If you really want to develop this cross-disciplinary thing, you know, look at the patterns that they make, because it is through patterns that you cross from one discipline to the other. So realize those patterns, then suddenly you would be, in fact, once you have, for example, understood how internet works and look at this data, and then immediately you think that maybe this is exactly the way, for example, mass aggregates, or this is exactly the way, for example, neurons communicate to each other, or maybe this is exactly the way how metabolism happens inside the cell. In fact, people have done metabolic networks inside the cell, and they have got a very similar network like this. Think about it. So our body is a network of networks from this perspective. Okay, it's a very kind of tiny thing. Of course, the only thing that changes is that the nodes either could be cells, or sometimes they could be neurons, sometimes they could be metabolites inside the cell. So depending on what level you are looking at it, the stuff keeps changing. And if you're doing in sociology, for example, it could be a city and a town or a village, or it could actually be the people as the nodes of this graph. So what are the elements in the graph may keep changing from point to point, but then a kind of a scale-free network always looks very similar to your eyes. I mean, there is some kind of an intuition that you see in the pattern, and therefore, you know, people will. So when people are formulating hypotheses or they get conjectures, you know, the creativity actually happens largely through pattern recognition, and the hypothesis formation also happens largely through pattern recognition. And to encourage people towards that, one of the key factors is encourage them to learn some of these models that are cross-cutting across disciplines. So I just gave you network as one of the paradigm examples. Of course, the proportional thinking is another paradigm example, which we discussed to some extent in the last lecture also. So now, if you want to read more about it, I certainly would recommend one more book. For today, this is the book that I want you to read. So this is a book written by a famous physicist, Albert Laszlo Barabasi, and this is an accessible book for person studying any subject in the world. Though he's a physicist, this book is not really about physics. In fact, the subtitle actually you can see how everything is connected to everything else and what it means for business, science, and everyday life. And the subtitle actually tells you that this is a kind of perspective. And linked here, you might have understood actually that the inspiration for me from philosophy to understanding the new ideas that are happening around in the world today. So Barabasi gave me a lot of interesting clues, and which actually led me to read, even other things like statistical mechanics, and also go a little deep into certain other disciplines and try to understand exactly how things happen. So it's a very inspiring book for me, and I'm very sure that most of you would also agree to do that. In fact, Barabasi has also done epidemiological studies in terms of, for example, how using his network models, he studied how diseases get transmitted from place to place. In fact, one of the first chapters that he discusses actually is about how did Christianity spread from one country to another country. And there also he applies a network model to interpret how the Christianity actually spread from one country to the other, and how it happened to be a kind of a global religion across the world. And then he tries to give a network model of the reason for their success is because they actually did not work from the ground. They actually hopped from cities to towns, and towns to the villages and things like that. So they actually used intuitively a paradigm that is very different from the way how things will happen. Of course, that was one of the hypotheses that he tries to use to understand such social phenomena as well. So a physicist is now trying to explain, uh, cutting across all the disciplines, trying to explain various phenomena in the world, including, of course, the example that I told you about how fake news also spreads from place to place. And in fact, the term, the meme, spreading, that you talk about nowadays, some meme has gone viral, So how does viral growth actually, what do you mean by viral spreading of some message? And that you can also understand from this particular perspective. So I would, just like I recommended one book last time, this is the next book that I would recommend you to read. And if some of you know a little more mathematics, then you can do this particular book, which I would say is an optional read, for which you need to know a little bit of mathematics, particularly statistical mechanics, and a little bit of calculus, and the graph theory, of course, which will help you to read. This is a famous textbook that is offered for a lot of people. I have also not gone beyond the second chapter of this book because my understanding of mathematics is limited. But I just wanted to tell you that, you should get inspired, because, this is such a powerful model that you feel that, once you understood this, you feel that, okay, now I understood something very important and essential. And this is one of the interesting features about the modern science today. In fact, we have heard about a lot of interesting achievements in science. Like, we think of Einstein, and we think of quantum mechanics, and we have many such great names all over the place in sciences. And then there is some important revolution that is actually taking place right in front of our eyes, and that I would consider is what is called the complex systems science. And now I would switch my attention to tell you exactly why that is also relevant for understanding this holistic and also the interdisciplinary approaches. Now, what is holism in network is one question that people ask. Now, think about this thing. A network gives you an organic formal structure. In fact, that is one of the interesting manner in which, for a scientist, an organic essentially would mean a network. That is the way how a scientist would approach something like organic. Of course, I'm not talking about, organic food and organic this and that, but I'm actually talking about organic in the sense of understanding a system. So if the system is a kind of a organic, essentially it means that the various components in that system are connected to each other. And then the connections are actually the ones that actually help you to understand that particular system. The system could be a living structure, it could be a social structure, it could be a financial transactional structure, it could be geographical understanding of, for example, how roads are connected to each other, and so on and so forth. It could be about communication mechanisms, for example, or whatever you talk about it. So it is in that sense that there is a very important point about this particular thing. And if you have, and by the way, there is another interesting philosophical move that these scientists make. These scientists are all inspired by system science. System science is another important thing. And if you haven't read about it, I would certainly request you to read a little more about system science. The reason for that is because system science doesn't talk about, that the understanding components is sufficient to understand the system. It says that the system, uh, though it is made of components, the manner in which the components interact with each other actually produces the system, and the system is considered to be more than the sum of all the parts that it is. And that is one of the common things that is followed by all the complex systems scientists that are there. And there are a large number of universities now started teaching this discipline now. And the mecca, so to speak, of complex systems is one institute uh, in the US. Um, and the and the group and the people in that university and other places are actually, the university name is Santa Fe University, Santa Fe Institute. So they have developed this particular tool to popularize these interdisciplinary models. And in fact, so this is one of the things that I wanted to expose you to a little bit. So let us look at the complexity explorers to a case. And of course, keep a note of this term complexity explorer. Even if you don't have the QR code or the link, just by typing complexity explorer, you will be reaching this particular site. And now, as you can see right in the beginning, as you go to that site, various subjects are written here. These are the disciplines that we're talking about. So now, which essentially means that this is one place where complex systems, where when you look at complex systems in each of these disciplines and try to understand what is happening in there, the various dynamics and the structure and dynamics of all these phenomena that are there, the mathematical models as well as epidemiology or ecology, chemistry, and things like that. So network science is separately written here. That's because network science has become really, really a kind of an independent kind of place, because it has become like a clear model. It is almost like statistical mechanics or thermodynamics, in one sense. And some people actually study these things also as nonlinear dynamics. But whether you call it nonlinear dynamics or you call it as complex systems, it comes here. So this is a model-based approach of, for example, how to inculcate or how to even develop within you a kind of an interdisciplinary approach. Because this is not the way how most of the subjects are actually being exposed to us during our school and college, because these subjects have not yet entered the school and college, except some examples here and there. And therefore, it is very important that as teachers, it is important for us to understand exactly some of these important developments. And one interesting thing is that if you go to Santa Fe Institute, you will actually be able to participate in online courses which are free of charge. These are massive open online courses, and I encourage you to also take some of those courses for your professional development. It doesn't matter whether you are a sociologist or a doctor or an engineer or a scientist or a mathematician, because they actually, in fact, I know very few institutes where there are no departments, and Santa Fe Institute is one of them. In fact, they basically have only people who will be doing, of course, one of them may have a little more mathematical approach, whereas the other person is doing much more in, let's say, economics or something like that. But then the people are recruited not for doing joining the Department of Economics or Department of Linguistics or something like that. So this is a kind of a trend that is actually happening, and I have seen that also at MIT to some extent. Where people actually do interdisciplinary kind of research. So to understand these trends, it is very important for you to understand. And all of them are very, very sympathetic to holistic and interdisciplinary approaches of doing academics. And you will be surprised to see a social scientist in those institutes, and you will be surprised to see somebody who is actually studying something like language, sometimes computer science, and sometimes something else. So this is the kind of approach that you have. So for today, just wanted to give you a couple of examples, some of the ones that I really like. So I will use this particular example. Which one? This is one example that I like, because it's very intuitive to understand. So let me go to the presentation slide mode and show you a couple of things here. Okay, so now this is a small model. And this model, let me just move it a little bit. Can you see the entire screen right now? Can somebody tell me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So this one, if you see, there are a couple of parameters here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And this is the phenomena here, as you could see. So these 9 belong to this particular structure. Okay, this structure is basically something like this, that has got a left hand arm and a right hand one, and then another branch is growing here, and again that would branch out like this. Okay, so now this particular model actually generates almost every tree in the world except something which you have to tell me which one is that, which tree this model doesn't explain a little later. But let us see. For example, this is how a tree looks like. Now when I click on this tree, what actually has changed is the only values of these values, the things have changed. So on one side here, what you see is the length of the right branch has increased. And right now, for example, if I change the right branch, this is how the tree forms. And if I go to the other side, the tree transforms like this. And keeping everything else constant. Now, this is what we call in model-based reasoning, salva veritate, which is essentially means keeping everything else constant, which is what we mean by an experiment. So this is your experimental lab here to understand how models work. Okay, now this is very interesting. Even children and students can actually understand this kind of a model. And it is such a excellent model to understand, of course, the branching patterns. Now, how many branching patterns can you think about this particular thing work out? Let me click on the weed part again, and again do the same thing. Like this time I'm doing the central branch. Okay, instead of looking at the right branch, now I'm modifying this one. And of course, if you do the length of the left branch, if you change, the kind of patterns that you see. Some of them are very familiar to you, and some of them look very awkward and may not be appearing intuitive to you. Now, this is one characteristic feature of model-based reasoning. It means that when you have a mathematical model of this kind or a computational model of this kind, it actually generates a lot of possibilities, and only few of them are actually actual. So, and that is in fact the reason why we call them, they are abstract models. And so I can, of course, go on and on. I mean, this is really one of the very interesting ways in which one can understand what is model-based reasoning. So this time I'm changing the angle of the left branch, keeping the length, etc. constant. The only angle is being changed. And if I change the angle of the central branch, it produces another kind of growth like this. So as you can see, this is actually a computational model. Lyndon Mayer, of course, has popularized this model. And that's why these are called L systems. I mean, if you actually want to know more about it, and if you don't remember the spelling of Lindenmayer, all that you have to search for is L system. And then there are so many L systems available out there. And of course, you can keep changing the angle for the noise. Noise essentially would mean, and in fact, this is very important in organic world, because the randomness in the model can be increased or decreased. So that is the meaning of the length noise and the angle noise. That means each time when it is getting simulated, it sort of arbitrarily adds, it picks up one value from a range of the values that are there in the mathematical model. And by the way, the software of these models is available for free in GitHub. And if any of you are really interested into computational modeling and things like that, you can actually go and look at the JavaScript software that is used in developing this. So I hope you understood the reason why I'm saying that these are cross-cutting ways in which people can understand how things can happen to this. Because you may be thinking that this is only about the trees and the leaves and things like that. Let me tell you, it could actually be, for example, the kind of a tree that you see in terms of vascular distribution of the blood vessels, for example, in your body. Now, if you want to model them and you want to see how that growth and how is that branching happening, or how are the veins and capillaries are actually branching, one can build a mathematical model of this kind as well. And of course, simulate them in the process. And as you can see, if you really interested in thickness scale, for example, this is how most of the trees are actually made. Particularly, for example, if this particular tree, fir tree, you want to increase the wood, for example, you will be able to take care of the thickness parameter of the scale is also sort of increased. And if you do it this way, then it might look like your rice grain or wheat kind of skull and things like that. And suddenly you will see maybe the only difference between the wheat ear and the pine tree is just the thickness part. So this is the meaning of understanding things through variables. In fact, in the last lecture, I also told you about cross-cutting methods of thinking is thinking through variables and parameters. So for any phenomena that you are looking at, try to see what are the parameters and variables. Of course, we start with circle and trying to find out what are the variables of a circle or a square or a triangle in geometry. But then the same way, almost every phenomena in the world actually is studied. So this is, and as I was saying, this particular site gives you examples from so many disciplines. It's not just one particular discipline. Since I already said a couple of things about network, you can also go and look at the network models as well. Now, again, I wanted to also tell you a little bit about another very important tool to promote your interdisciplinary thinking, and also to look at how to solve some of the problems using interdisciplinary models. The other tool for you to understand is NetLogo. Just remember the name NetLogo if you haven't already used this particular tool before. And again, if you go to Santa Fe Institute, they have special courses to teach you NetLogo. Because it is like this. For example, it was said that people who do not know geometry need not enter Plato's Academy. I mean, which is also true today. For example, if you want to join TF or IITs or any of these higher education institutes, they do ask a lot of questions in mathematics and geometry and things like that. Now, if you want to go and become a complex systems theorist, okay, one of the things that they ask you is, do you know NetLogo? It has also become like that. So it is authored by someone called Yuri Velensky in the Northwestern University. And this is also a Nagar free software that is available for all the academics as well as students as well. And you can do a lot of projects using this particular simulation. And so I strongly encourage you to, develop this thing. And why do I say that? I just wanted to put my argument very clearly. So even if you don't install it on your local machine, you can also play it from the web directly. And I just wanted to show you. I don't want to. I mean, depending on the time, maybe we can look at it. But just look at the list of models that are listed here. You will see the models come from physics, and then it goes on to mathematics, and then it goes on to social sciences, okay, and electromagnetism, and then economics, computer science, okay, and psychology, and then biology, and also a lot of examples that are given of various kinds. So what is the difference between the complexity explorables and the net logo? Net logo uses what is called agent based modeling. Now, agent-based modeling is used whenever your phenomena has multiple particles or multiple interactions in your system. So that applies to a lot of things out there. So take, for example, if I say network, for example. So this is a famous model which I was talking to Barabas. He made this preferential attachment quite popular. So this is a preferential attachment model. I can set it up like this. Okay, now you got two nodes that are linked together, and I can keep on increasing the nodes. And you may see as each time I click, the nodes are distributed. And on this side, you are doing the mathematical modeling on these plots out here. So you are looking at the degree distribution. And here is a log-log plot of the degree distribution in these two things. Now, something interesting happens as you keep going more and more. You look at the initially, as the number of particles, number of nodes are very few. You won't see any pattern in the graph here. But as I see, I keep on increasing the number of nodes. Okay, the log-log plot actually shows you a straight line after a period of time. So this is a kind of an organization that is automatically happens in most of the organic world. And this is a characteristic feature of whether it is neural networks, whether it is computer networks, whether it is the way how the mass gets aggregated in the galaxies and in the cosmos and things like this. So this is, after some time, this graph becomes scale free, which means that even if you add 1,000 nodes more and things like that, this particular equation pattern doesn't change. And that's why these are also called scale free in that sense. So of course, you can make it just go on its own without going it once. And you can also increase the speed of this node. Of course, depending on how fast your computer is and how many cores you have on a computer, you'll be able to do this. And the source code of these models is also available immediately in the same place. For example, if you click on this, you'll get the code of this thing, and you'll be able to make changes to this and do whatever you want to do it. And how many nodes you want also can be changed from here itself. I mean, I just wanted to give you one or two examples so that you get inspired by this thing. And so maybe I will just stop this simulation, because it may also, once in a while, I have hung my computer having posted many of those things at your time. I hope you took note of this book, which I strongly encourage you to read. And this is the Complexity Explorer, and this is the link for the net logo. And yeah, so can I now open up to some questions, and then we can pick up and see, depending on your interest, if you are interested to check a couple of other examples as well.
Yes, sir. I have one query.
Yeah,
So you are talking about some of those online courses in Sentapi institutes.
right.
So whether we are supposed to pay for them, because some kind of those means whether it is open courseware or some other, like you have given the example of MIT as well.
Right.
even courseware also. So we need to
But I
pay.
think, to the best of my knowledge, the Santa Fe Institute courses are free of charge.
Okay, okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if you submit assignments regularly, they'll also give you a certificate toward the end.
So if you can share the URL with participants, it would be good actually, sir, so that we can.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, in
Thank you.
fact, this is another thing that I would also do is, like, for example, I would simply be doing something like this, um, Santa Fe uh, Institute, even if the spelling is wrong, doesn't matter,
Yes, sir.
and complexity courses. So that's all you need, and then you go there. Okay. So this is the programs you can learn from. So like, for example, they have studies of this kind, and then they also have MOOC courses right here. All right. So you can explore these things, and I have also posted once in a while some blog posts on Meta Studio, the link of which I gave in the last session. You can also get to know about them. So this is in fact, as I said, this Complexity Explorer is linked from Santa Fe Institute as one of the other thing, you know. So let me just take you to that link, and I will put this link uh, in the message here, the message box. Okay, this is the link, and so do explore that link. Okay, so this is the complexityexplorer.org. Okay, and so there they give you introduction to complexity, so the fundamentals of complexity science. And so they have done introductory courses as well as advanced courses. Most of these free courses are largely introductory. For example, if you're not familiar with nonlinear dynamics, for example, you can take a course on that. You can also take a course on introduction to information theory, or, for example, see, there's a point about it. Just like networks, I talked about, game theory is another such tool. Fractals is another such tool. So each of them is applied across disciplines. And in fact, I created a list of such things in one of the slides. So let me go to that slide. Where did I do that? Did I miss bringing that slide here? Okay, I think yeah, this is the one. Let me show you this slide. Okay, so this is a kind of a list of those things. So each of these models that I listed here actually help you to understand phenomena across disciplines. And I mean, one of the first and ancient one is, of course, the natural selection by Darwin. And Darwin happens to be a biologist, but then his model is applied across biology, not only in biological sciences, but also in various disciplines, wherever you are studying some historical patterns and things like that. In fact, even microbial growth and social variations and things like that. So wherever you see some variation, and you have to understand how is it that only some of the varieties are actually present in the world. As I said, in one of the examples that I told you, like, there are so many trees that I developed in that simulation just a while ago. Now, all of them are possible variations. But the question that you have to ask is, why is it that some of the variations do not actually work in the world that we live in? And that is where the selection comes in. And of course, once in a while that selection may happen, but then if that selected one is not inherited, that means if it is not propagated into the next generation and things like that, then it will not work out. Now, this particular model is actually considered today by the historians of science as one of the first probabilistic models that was ever applied in sciences. Darwin himself will never say that I'm a mathematician, but his actual model is a mathematical model, which is becoming popular only much more recently, because it's a recent reconstruction of the history, and they actually see that even before, because Darwin, at the time of Darwin, for example, the probability theories are not popular among mathematicians, but then he applied probabilistic way of thinking about his theory in biology, because that's what is required. And the other theory is information theory. Now, you can't really, for example, do information theory without understanding thermodynamics. The question is like, what is the connection between thermodynamics and information theory? And you'll be surprised to see the kind of the patterns that in thermodynamics sort of gives you. The context may be heat and temperature and all that, but then it applies to any place where there is a swarm of things interacting with each other. And that's the kind of of course, sometimes people call it as studying order and disorder in systems, but that's the interesting aspect about it. Network models I already talked to you about, and then generative models of diversity. So the generative models of diversity, of course, are very popular in chemistry, biology, and various other places. Like, for example, if you have only 20 amino acids in the world, in almost all the plants and animals that we see, but then look at the amount of diversity that we have in the world. The genetic code is all DNA and RNA, right? And there are only 4 nitrogenous bases that form the nuclear model. But then how is it that just the 4 nitrogenous bases in various combinations and participations in a kind of a linear chain actually created so much of diversity in the world? And so these are combinatorial and generative models of diversity. Also give you a lot of interdisciplinary ways of thinking. And a Turing machine is another example of trying to do information processing only using read, write, and operate. Very simple: read, write, and operate on a memory. And you look at what we are doing right now. For example, we are having this meeting using an implementation of a Turing machine. And most of the computational methods are all happening using, at the end of it, they're all read, write, and operate. So if you understand that part of the mathematics, in fact, Turing's machine is actually a mathematical model. It was a paper published in a mathematical journal, but of course the people like von Neumann and Church and many others actually developed the semantics for that, such that we can actually have the kind of computers that we have today. And another popular thing that we also learn in school is the inverse square law, which is also, we study it in the terms of, 2 bodies having a force or a field kind of thing. But then it is also used to study even radial diffusion, signal strength in communication theory, and things like that. So what I'm trying to essentially talk about, of course, the last example in this list that I've given you is systems theory, which is also something that sort of inspired me quite a lot, because at one time systems theory was already considered to be a dead model. But then, as you can see, the thriving institutes like Santa Fe Institute and MIT Media Lab and all that, which generated, for example, the net logo is an outcome of MIT Media Lab, where Yuri Velensky did his PhD with Sima Papert and Michel Resnick, whose book I recommended you to read. So these are the people who developed the tools for promoting this kind of interdisciplinary way of learning, and also doing research. It's not just about learning; it's also about research. So to promote interdisciplinary kind of model, I would want you to pick up this kind of new thinking styles, such that you understand actually what is underlying when you talk about holistic way of looking at it, not in a reductionist model that you are doing one discipline and therefore you will only study physics books. It's not going to work, because in fact a lot of physicists like Barabasi, for example, is a physicist. Shogarts is another example of another physicist who but the kind of problem they are solving is not always in physics. So that was the point. So many of these things are, so of course, will be talked about. So complexity explorer is the keyword for you, and complexity explorables is the place where you get the online tools. So complexity explorer is the place where you get the courses. Complexity explorables is the place from where you get the tools. And of course, it's not very difficult for you to find these things when you do a little bit of lookup on your favorite browser. Or if you have also any, comments, questions, or even suggestions, whatever you have, any kind of feedback that you want to give us, or if you, for example, yourself want to, for example, continue to, create a small community or a group, so that we can help you in your professional development in some way. So for that, of course, I have already given in the previous place. You can join at this site which was developed at TIFR by Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education, and I'll be accessible there as @GN. That's my. Sorry, I think something happened. You visit the site and you log in. You can send me messages by simply addressing me as @GN. So usually, what I do is when I give teacher training courses, I invite a lot of teachers and students to that platform so that I can continue to be in touch with them as I kind of continue to be mentoring. Then we do a lot of science education programs and other things on this platform. So it is free to join because it is an offering from TIFR to all the science education participants. And of course, please also encourage your students to join as well, because it is one place where students and teachers interact with each other. So where, for example, you can discuss if any of you want to learn something, or if you couldn't find a resource or something like that, you can ask us. We'll be able to help in procuring those resources as well.
Thank you very much, Professor Nagarjuna, and thank you very much
All right.
to you for
Thank you so much.
participating this evening. Thank you. Good night.